we are going to start this evening's workshops, and I believe, Mr. Archer, you are kicking us off.
We need to do, excuse me, we need to do roll call.
My apologies. Please do roll call. I am very excited. Please do the roll call, Ms. Rush.
Mayor Simpson, Mayor Pro Tem Mormon,
Here.
Councilmember Ambrose,
Here.
Councilmember Davis,
Here.
Councilmember Pfeiffer,
Here.
Councilmember Marriott,
Here.
Councilmember Rupert.
Here.
All right. Do I have a motion to excuse Mayor Simpson?
I move.
Councilmember Pfeiffer, I think.
That doesn't matter. Go for it.
Oh, and Councilmember Davis. It was a draw.
I move to excuse Mayor Simpson.
Thank you. You're going to have to vote again. My apologies. Okay, now I'm ready. All right, with all votes cast, that is 6 in support of excusing Mayor Simpson, and with Mayor Simpson being excused, except my vote was locked out, it seems.
No, you voted at the top.
Yeah, you're at the
Oh, okay. I'm just on there twice. Okay. All right. So that motion passes. Thank you. All right, now we will go to you, Mr. Archer.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. We appreciate your time. Tonight, we are here to present to you two different sections of our budget, one being our operating and one being our capital. As you know, the budget process takes a long time, kind of starts earlier in the year, really picks up steam throughout the summer as we do our work, and then ultimately presented to City Council in the fall. So what we're doing tonight is kind of giving you an opportunity to see where we are in the process. So certainly what you're going to see in front of you are not our final numbers. It's not even our recommendations. It's just what we're working on right now. And so as you see up on the screen, this is our schedule of events. Tonight we're going to present you our 10-year model and any kind of assumption changes that we've already made. In July and August, the city team does its budget work in presenting the different requests that we might have, and ultimately ending up with our city manager's recommended budget, which you will receive hopefully August the 30th. That's our plan. We will then have a session of presentations to you, a couple of workshops, the 23rd and October 14th, first reading on October 7th, and then ideally second reading and adoption on October the 21st. So as we jump in, this is an overview of what we will look at tonight. We're going to show you our 10-year models, kind of talk through what has changed since the last time we presented last September to you, and what has been updated with our closeout of 2024. We will talk specifically about the general fund parks, the TI funds, and our 5 enterprise funds. We are not going to present to you tonight our internal service funds, that being insurance, computers, vehicles, and buildings. They will come to you during the city manager's recommended budget. So if we take a look at assumptions that are across all funds, we want to point out some of the larger ones. Certainly, our largest expenditure is our team, and so personnel is always one that rises to the top. We are feeling pressure. As you know, the last few years, our HR team has recommended salary range adjustments anywhere from 4 to 5%, and we've only been able to afford 2 to 3%. So we're kind of falling behind in that environment. And this year, preliminary numbers are showing that they are feeling that we're looking at about a 4.3% adjustment needed for next year. We have 2% in the budget. So we're working with them and seeing what we can do to kind of close that gap. So more to come. And in the future, we still are using that 2% number. That's the number we've been using for a while. Is that a good number? Last few years, it has not been a good number, but we will see moving forward if we return back to that as maybe inflation slows down. We do still budget 100% of our steps, meaning every person that's eligible for a step, we budget that they will receive that step. And that overall increase to the budget is about 1.75. That is in every model. Healthcare, as you are well aware, hopefully, the last 6 years, we've had 0% increase in healthcare, which is incredible. That's pretty much unheard of. That has now changed, as we expected it to. As it sits right now, we're seeing an 8% projected healthcare increase. We have 5 in the model. We feel very comfortable that we will be able to adjust that number down and hit that 5%, maybe even beat it. But again, just trying to give you an update of where we are so you know kind of the things that we wrestle with. On the positive side, we talked a lot last year about property tax and what was happening at the state of Colorado. We did mention that in our year-end report. We are expecting a property tax increase in 2025 to come in at about 4%. We had budgeted 2, so that's a positive. And we are expecting the increase in 26 to return back to a normal amount of about 1%. We'll talk here in a minute what that looks like for our overall revenue changes.
Councilmember Ambrose has a question.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Mormon. Do you want questions as it's going?
Yes,
Or
this is supposed to be an interaction, so.
Okay, great.
Yes,
Do you
please.
have other slides explaining the healthcare expenses and plans for that, or?
We do not.
Okay, can you, or maybe bring back, if you don't have it right now, how are you planning to do these healthcare cost savings to get down from the projected 8% to an actual 5%?
Yeah, there are a lot of different options that we will look at. Just to name a few, we can make changes on out-of-pocket adjustments. So let's say today our out-of-pocket max for family is $3,000, and maybe the average is $4,000. We could raise it to $4,000, and that will help reduce our ongoing increases. We could also make changes to the types of options that we offer. So maybe we have a coinsurance model, and maybe today our coinsurance model is a 90-10. We could look at an 80-20 or things like that. And so we will take all of that. We have a benefits consultant that works with us. We have a benefits team here at the city that is made up of not only the HR, but employees throughout the organization. And they will research all of those and see which ones will make the best difference and then propose those.
And when you are looking at that information, are you also looking at the effect that would have on recruitment and retention? Because we're still understaffed, correct?
Yes, absolutely. We take a look at what other cities and counties are doing, our competition, and try to make sure that we stay competitive with all of that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. As we talked, building activity is slowing down. Hopefully you all received your first quarter report and you had the opportunity to read that we were a little bit ahead of where we were last year, but we're certainly slowing down as compared to previous years. And then no real changes in interest. I know there's a lot of numbers on the screen, and I apologize for that. What we want to focus you on is as we put in the 2024 actuals and put in the assumptions that we have made, and we'll talk about these here in just a minute, if I focus you to the far bottom right-hand corner, the end of our 10-year plan, you will notice that we are now sitting at a positive roughly $7 million. The last time we presented to you in September, that number was a little bit smaller than that. So we're starting off with a little bit more at the end of our 10-year than we were with our last budget process. If we dig deeper into the general fund, the items you will see up there with the different colors are the changes we've made. So first one, a negative change. We were expecting a 2.1% increase in sales tax for 2025. That is trending more to 1%. And so we're proposing making that adjustment right away. You will also notice that we do have the inclusion of the ORA revenues coming in 2029. That is the Ralston Fields area. We have included that revenue, but we do need to update it. So we have new businesses that are coming in there, new development that's going in, and so as part of this budget process, we will be working on updating that. That should have an increase in revenues for our area from there. It's more dense than it was before. There's more businesses there than it was the last time.
Councilmember Ambrose has another question.
Great.
I know this is so small, but what is the $11 from other financing services? And why is that broken out for $11?
The revenue transfer, other financing sources back in 2024. That's a requirement just from our aquifer. We can certainly strip it out if you'd like.
Okay, and what is it again?
I don't know specifically what that amount is for.
Okay. I was just curious. I was like, we're looking at millions, and then there's this one field that's $11. I'm like, okay. And then the same question I have, you haven't started to go over expenditures yet, but you don't have any anticipated expenditures in debt service, but you're just required to show that for
That is correct. So
Okay.
ultimately, debt service is handled in a different fund. It's a transfer that goes to that fund, but we're required to represent it here. But we can strip these out if you don't want to see them.
No, I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Thank you.
What we have not included in our 10-year modeling, again, is any urban renewal money that will come in 2034 as that next area goes away. We will not include that this year either. We will look to include that in the next 2-year budget cycle. You will notice that we're also adjusting auto use tax. You will see that in the upcoming slides. And then as far as line items go, our largest increases happened with last year's budget cycle. We are seeing a return to more normal, whatever normal means, inflationary cycles. And so we're going to keep our increases that we had built in, anywhere from 1% to 3% in the future, and see how we go from there. This is a sales tax graph that I think you've all seen many times over. And again, all we want to do is show you that we've adjusted 2025 to 1%, but we've kept the rest of the years the same. So no changes to any of those as it sits now. As comparison, what does that do to us? So ultimately, a 1% change in sales tax, you can see, lowers 2025 by about 1.1 million, 1.2 million or so. And then that is carried forward. When we talk in our next presentation on the CIP side, you'll see that has an effect throughout our entire model, with sales tax being our largest revenue source. Again, having a 10-year model, building the base off of your current, any changes you make have effects in the future. That's all this is trying to represent. Same piece of information for auto use, a little bit more fluctuations in these. We certainly have seen a reduction in purchases with autos. We saw a little bit of a spike at the beginning of this year with tariffs, people trying to buy vehicles, especially foreign vehicles, quicker, expecting that those vehicles' costs were going to raise. We will see if that continues throughout the year. We do not think it will. We think a lot of people, you don't usually buy multiple vehicles. If you buy your car, you've bought it. And so we're expecting maybe a 1% growth on that. And again, same type of comparisons. 1% changes in auto use are not as significant as they are in sales tax.
I apologize, Mr. Archer. Would you mind going back to the slide
Which one?
that says 10-year financial plans, expenditure assumptions, all funds?
That one?
Yes, this one.
Okay.
So could you talk more about the last two bullets under sales tax that talks about aura, that inclusion of aura in 2029 updated with revised budget, and then the bullet that does not include aura 2034? Could you just talk about those 2 points a little more?
Sure. What else would you like me to talk about?
So including aura in our budget is an expense to the city?
No. So these are revenues coming in. I apologize.
Okay.
Councilmember Ambrose. These are revenues coming in as the urban renewal areas roll out. So after 25 years, then we get the base plus the increment. And so the Ralston Fields area ends at the end of 28 in October. And so we start getting the full effect of that in 29. We estimated that a few years ago based upon what was there. Now that they've had increased development, other entities coming in, we need to redo that. So we'll be doing that as part of this budget cycle. So we should see some revenue growth there. In 2033, we have a couple other urban renewal areas that are going to go offline. And so additional revenue will come in 2034. It's not as significant as the Ralston Fields area. We have not included that in any of these assumptions. We will not do that until next year's budget cycle. That way we can count it in 34 and 35.
Okay, so I just wanted to be clear that it's not included in this presentation, not that we weren't going to get those dollars.
Yes, I
After that
apologize
point,
for
yeah.
that. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's take a look at a quick where we are today compared to our estimates. So down the left-hand side, you can see all the various revenue sources and what our budget was expected to be for 25. Currently, our change to that, so you can see sales tax, we're expecting to go to 1%, no change in use tax, no change in auto, a reduction in building, no real change in property tax, no change in courts, no change in HUTF, and you can see where we are today. So currently, sales tax is negative. However, our last few months have reversed and started growing. So we're feeling pretty good that we're going to return to a more predictable sales tax environment. Again, no changes in the use in auto. Building tax is down 31%. However, that's compared to the prior year that we saw a significant jump. And so we still feel like we will get close in building use tax, depending on how the rest of the year goes. We are not expecting it to be down 31%. Property tax, we talked a little bit about already. Court revenues, again, court is not a revenue producer. They are just reflective of what's happening. And then our HUTF revenues, we're actually seeing a little bit of a spike there. I guess some more people are driving, going back into the office. We will see how that goes throughout the year. The last column, I think, is the most valuable, and that represents what a 1% change means, both annually, this means in 1 year, and then you can extrapolate that over the 10-year model. So 1% on sales tax, obviously way more than 1% in courts or property tax or any of the others. And this is more for your information, not necessarily anything for you to do with it, just so you're aware. This is a chart of all the revenue changes that we've made to date in our 10-year plan. So as we're lowering sales tax from an estimated 2.1 or 2.3% growth to a 1% growth, it affects us not only in the current year, but in our 10-year model. So today in the general fund, that cost us $14 million, okay? That changed from 2.1 to 1%. But the changes in use tax, auto use tax, property, on down, as you can read them, these are the effects of the rest of them. Overall, it nets out to a positive $2.8 million, okay? Again, I realize this is sausage being made. We're just trying to demonstrate to you what we do each and every year. We dig a little bit deeper, and if you all printed out your slides or downloaded your slides, some of this is going to look a little different. Deb and I earlier today found that we labeled a few things. I labeled a few things. Excuse me, they didn't. I labeled a few things incorrectly. So that might say something different. It might say park fund across the top, but it should say general fund. You will see, so sorry about that. The numbers are all right. The label across the top is wrong. You will notice that again, we talk a little bit deeper about that salary range adjustment, that 2% versus 4.3, healthcare. We still have the same capacity challenges. We're still seeing departments present budgetary needs for positions, certainly feeling that heavily on the PD side, but other areas as well. We do want to point out that per the direction of council and the city manager last year, that we added additional funding to street maintenance. That was both a one-time and an ongoing fund. If you remember, that was because we had increased revenues in '24. So we've added $2.4 million one time to the street maintenance. That was, you all just approved that in April. And we added $400,000 per year to this model. So if you add that all up, $6.4 million plus inflation. We did have to increase our transfer to the 98-101 fund, again, because that's tied directly to sales tax. Sales tax goes down, that goes down. And you'll see those effects on our CIP presentation here in just a minute.
Councilmember Davis.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. You have retention of employees, and in parens, you have medium turnover. What do you mean by that?
So we are trending down in our year-over-year turnover. It's still elevated above what we were experiencing before. So it's not super high turnover, and it's not back to where we want to be. So it's kind of in the medium.
I'm interested in talking a little bit about capacity. If we were to increase expenditures, for example, in street maintenance, how much room do we have in capacity to actually pull off a new project?
We are starting to get to the point that if we add additional funding, we're going to need additional help. So they are pretty well taxed with the resources they have today from a personnel perspective to implement additional dollars. Last time we spoke to the gentleman and the team running the street maintenance program, they felt like every $1 to $1.5 million additional increase money that they would need to add a position. And so that's kind of where we are today. Is that what you were asking, Councilmember?
It is, yeah.
Councilmember Marriott.
Let me follow that up. That means that just our overhead for that type of contracted services is 10%, just the in-house part of that? Because that's
I
kind of.
think, yeah, there's economies of scale, obviously, as you work on larger contracts, but that's kind of where we are from a capacity perspective.
I'm shocked by that. I would anticipate that, you know, if you're saying every $1.5 million requires another staff member to help manage that $1.5 million worth of expenditures, I would think it's 10 times that a staff member could manage $10 million worth of streets
Yeah.
maintenance, because that's all contract expenditures. It's not like we're talking about doing it
It
ourselves.
is, but this is not just staff member for the contract, it's inspections, it's all engineering, it's all the pieces of it. So it's not necessarily one staff member
Yeah.
for that piece, it would be across the entire.
No,
So, does that make sense?
Yeah, I get it. I understand what you're saying. It's every facet of what we do. I'm just absolutely shocked that's what it would be.
Yeah, I mean, certainly I may be misspeaking here, but I think that's
Yeah.
pretty much what we did the last time we had
Okay.
that conversation. So
Yeah.
we can talk with them and circle back on it and make sure, maybe I'm wrong, but.
Right. So I would suggest as maybe a longer term visioning kind of exercise or planning, longer term planning, that, you know, the streets maintenance deficit is some amount, $10 million maybe, something like that, and that, you know, that the exercise might be, if we had that money, how can we administer that the most efficiently, so that the city can at least be in a position to be able to do that? Because if it's too expensive to administer, which is essentially what it is, then that means the streets maintenance deficit isn't $10 million, it's
Right.
$12 million or
Right.
some much larger number. And, you know, that efficiency starts to really matter. I mean, really matter. And so I would suggest that we start planning for that.
Sure.
Because I don't think the possibility exists that the city continue to just neglect its streets maintenance obligation forever into the future. We've done it for a while, for a couple decades, but it's as we've seen in all those presentations, it's clearly not sustainable. You cannot do it forever, and that at some point we'll have to put that on the right footing, and so we ought to be prepared when that happens to do that efficiently, because I'd love to see, you know, at some point, you know, the council decide that that's a priority and that we're going to do that before we do some of this other stuff, and boom, there it's going to be, and it needs to be efficient so that the other stuff we have to stop doing, we don't have to stop doing as much of it to you know, maintain levels of service.
Yeah, let me take the opportunity to meet with the team and clarify. I may be misspeaking, and make sure that I know they have that plan. I know they have that implementation plan. I know they've done it, and so let us take that chance to bring it back. So that stops with the general fund. We'll go ahead and start running through the other funds. You'll see a very similar cadence. You will notice the Parks Fund is next, and while we are negative in our 10th year, they have pushed out, if you remember, that they were negative out in year 8. So they've been able to do a great job, working really hard on adjusting their revenue, specifically around field maintenance and their expenditures, economies of scale, et cetera. And so now we're out into, you can't see 2033 because it wouldn't fit, but 2033 starts being the negative year that we're not reaching our fund balance goal, and they actually go into a negative fund balance starting in 2034. So we're actually pretty excited that the work that they're doing, they've been challenged to make this go away. They're working very hard at it. So I'm expecting by the time we come back to you this fall, we will have some presentations and some changes that maybe even make that number go away. And again, the largest changes for parks really are around ongoing expenditures in field operations. And so they're trying to increase the costs where they can, decrease the costs where they can, increase the revenue in areas that we can still be competitive. Certainly they're taking the approach as well that they're trying to protect youth sports if they can, and if we're going to charge people, we're trying to charge adults. So, you know, my softball league is certainly paying more, and their increases are going to be more than a kids' soccer league would be. And that was from the city council's direction, so they're trying to respect that. We are seeing increases on our open space revenue, but not as much as it was. So, open space is throughout, in this case, Jefferson County or Adams County, and so if Lakewood was seeing a lot of growth and, we were just seeing a lot of growth, we were getting that through open space. But now throughout the county, the overall county growth is not as significant as it was. We do have 3% built in. We do need to note that we missed last year. It was 2.1% in '24. However, we're now trending a little bit ahead of that this year, so we'll just kind of see where we end up. Police tax increment, we have the 0.21 and then the 0.25. Really, the update on this is, again, their savings is personnel related. Again, being down the number of officers, that bottom line, those dollars then flow to the end. You will notice that the TI fund now has about 2.8 million above their fund balance goal. The 0.25 fund or the 25 fund is now about 1.3 million above their fund balance goal. So certainly, the good thing with this is these dollars can only be used for police services, so they roll back in the fund and then they will program them. Again, as we come back this fall, we will look at ways to programming these dollars. They're tied pretty much to the general fund, so really the same revenue that you just heard about, same conversation about the ORA revenue in 2029. We are happy to report that the evidence storage currently is fully funded. That project is moving forward. Like any project, there's setbacks along the way, but we feel very confident that that will get built. We talked about recruitment and retention. We're excited to say that radios and computers need to be replaced. We put that in green because we have a plan for that, and we're implementing that plan. And then I went ahead and put up the Real-Time Information Crime Center. That is something that the PD, along with the rest of the organization, is exploring, and you'll hear more about that coming up for ways for us to get that data back. Initially, this was proposed by PD, but PD noticed that, and through the CMO, that this could actually be something that the entire organization could use. And so now we're revisiting that. So I did list it under the tax increments, but it really is going to be an organizational-wide presentation to you all. The next few are our enterprise funds. These models jump all over the place. As you well know, you've heard a lot about water and wastewater and stormwater, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on them. As you can see, our fund balance goes up and down. We have built in the bond issue that's going to go later this month. In the water fund, that's the 95 million, estimated 95 million in 2025, and then the expenditures related to that. There are proposals for additional debt issuance out in the future, and we will bring those back as part of the city manager's budget. That is what this says. Did want to reflect that city council did step forward and approve the full implementation, if you all remember, of their CIP plan in 2024, and that allowed us to have a little bit larger fee increase than what was modeled, just 1% larger in the water fund. That is now built in. We did complete the $2 base service fee increase in 23, 24, and 25. That's the $2 per month. And then we have adjusted the system development charges, formerly TAP fees. In October of last year, we will be re-looking at that this fall to see where we fall out. Don't know if there's going to be an increase in that or not. I can't even venture a guess, but we will certainly keep you in the loop as the utilities has come and presented to you in a pretty good cadence. And then there are updates to our one-pager. You received that the last time that they presented to you all, and we will, after we rerun the rates and the system development charges this fall, you will receive another update on that. Same story on the wastewater side, same pieces of information. Again, just want to reflect, thank you again to City Council for stepping forth and really allowing that increase. If we take a look at stormwater, stormwater is currently sitting on about $2.9 million at the end of the model that need to be programmed. They have projects that they are looking to prioritize. Those will be prioritized and those dollars will get programmed. And again, City Council approved the 5% fee increase, and we've built in a 5% estimate moving forward on the stormwater side. And the master plan is ready to go. Now they're just prioritizing and looking to fund. Solid waste you've heard a lot about. In fact, you just approved or will be approving that contract. And so The numbers on here are just reflective of the information you've already seen. So nothing to add there, other than pointing out that it does meet the fund balance goal. We finally are growing, and we finally got it to that point, so we're excited about that. And we are forecasting the cart replacement in 2031, 2032 timeframe. Last time we talked about this, we may not replace all the carts in 1 year. We might phase it, just so that it's a little bit easier. But also remember, there's a possibility of having a new contract by then and a lot of different variables that may come into that. But we are seeing, if we take a look again, in our working capital goal and our fund balance goal, it growing to the point that we should be able to cash finance those cart replacements. That was a direction when we created this plan. We're still heading in that direction.
Mr. Archer, just to call out too, I think on the carts, at least the recycling carts, that may be funded by the producer responsibility program. So let's keep an eye on that as well.
That'd be great. Absolutely. And Mayor Pro Tem, if that does happen, we certainly would then bring back adjustments in that cart replacement schedule to you all as well.
And Councilmember Ambrose has a question.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Mormon. Can you explain to me the working capital beginning and working capital ending lines, why we track that and what the goal is?
So there is no goal established for the solid waste fund. We don't have like a 25% of operating or anything to that extent. The working capital beginning and end is kind of like your savings account. So those are your dollars when you start the year, and then we're adding revenues, taking away expenditures, and then what you have at the end of the year. Really in this fund, our goal is to have enough money to replace the carts. And then eventually we will come to City Council with some percentage of a working capital goal, like we have with other funds. We just haven't done it on this one because we wanted to get through the debt payment. You will notice that we make the final debt payment in 25. And once we're through that, then we can start talking about the next phase.
I was more curious about them just as, because all the enterprise funds have
Yes.
them, right? And I was just curious if like the goal or general fiscal accounting rule is, and it sounds like you set goals that you want to have in that savings for each enterprise fund.
We do.
And if one of the things should be that they are, even when you, you end with as much as you started with, if that's like a rule of thumb with in these budgets?
So, yes and no. Basically, no, I mean, the question is a very valid question.
Yeah.
What we do is we take our beginning working capital balance, add our revenues, minus our expenditures. We come up with an ending working capital balance. And for the funds that have an established goal, you have to be above that goal to be considered a balanced budget. So let's take a look at stormwater. Stormwater has a capital goal of 25%. So if we look at 2025, our beginning working capital, 1.5 million. Our ending is 3.7 because in this case, we're proposing issuing debt in stormwater. We're not going to, but we were proposing on doing it. And then we take our working capital goal out, and therefore we have extra money, okay, or money that can be applied in this case to projects. For solid waste, we have not established that goal because our goal was really to get our debt paid off and then get enough money put in the bank to replace the carts. We can certainly bring a goal back to City Council, or you can propose one to us, and we can build that in. Anything we would put in today would show we were not meeting that goal. So it's going to be negative, and we were trying to get the program established and get through before reflecting that.
Okay,
Does that help?
Yeah, that helps a lot. And so I'll be looking for more details in the reports because there's just some places where, you know, I think the stormwater actually is a great example of where the 2028 forecast beginning is like $1 million, and then you want to end at 500,000, and then you want to start with 800,000 in the, well, that's missing 2029, so that's why that doesn't line up. But, you know, but I feel like deeper in your report is the explanation as to why this year forecasting we're starting or ending with different levels. Yeah.
Yes.
Councilmember Marriott.
Mr. Archer, do enterprise funds like the solid waste fund have a Tabor mandated reserve?
So, technically, yes.
Okay.
However, since we're not subject to Tabor here at the city, Tabor becomes a entire city calculation, not an individual fund calculation. So, yeah, I mean, you're supposed to have 3% on here, but because it's covered by other ones, we don't reflect it.
Councilmember Rupert.
I'm interested in what the origin of the 25% working capital goal is. Is that council direction
Yes.
or, okay?
Yes, so council has a budget and fiscal policy that was established 2014, 2015 time period. And we had various working capital / fund balance goals by various funds depending on their risk and depending on if they carried a debt or not. And so the enterprise funds, because they're a little more risky, had a higher fund balance goal than, let's say, the general fund or a parks fund. This is council's prerogative. And so we owe you a conversation around these to see if you would like to add or subtract from them.
Well, that's sort of my way of teeing that conversation up, because I really do think that we ought to have a conversation about our reserves and about the working capital. What is the actual level of fluctuation? We just came through COVID, which was arguably the biggest hit to our economy in almost a century. And from our earlier conversations, our reserves actually never even went down to the 17%. So is the 17% the right number? There are organizations in our state that are very happy with 11 and 12%.
Yep.
So we may have a lot of money there that's earning 2.5%, and we are putting off expenditures that are increasing at nearly double-digit rates. So I want us to have a conversation about the right use of money. Taxpayers aren't giving us money so that we can have an inefficient savings account.
Sure. Absolutely. We can certainly have that conversation. And that would also give us the opportunity to clean up things like the solid waste fund, for example, of, okay, what kind of fund balance working capital goal would you like us to establish? We could also say, okay, the goal is to equal to the estimated cost of cart replacement, and that's $2 million, and that's your goal. You're going to try to get to $2 million or whatever it might be. So,
Thank you.
thank you. Last couple, so golf course, we've really been touting their successes over the past few years. It seems like since COVID, people have rediscovered golf, and they're certainly willing and wanting to play a lot and then support our restaurants as well. And so the last few years, we've added to that working capital. You can see in the golf courses, their working capital is 11%, not 25 like the other ones. That was established years ago with the thought that their need to do capital projects isn't as great or wasn't as great at the time as water, wastewater, et cetera. That certainly might be a different philosophy moving forward as those courses are aging, the restaurants are aging, et cetera. You will see this budget cycle that they've proposed quite a large amount of reinvestment in both areas, both golf courses. And so certainly as it sits now, they're having about $2.5 million at the end of 10 years, but that number will be put to work. And just, that's repeating what I just said. And so wanted to leave you with kind of our future strategic opportunities. You've seen these before. We feel like, and there were many more of these up here the last few years, and we talked about this, and we feel like the team is picking a lot of these off. And so you'll see under security, both structural and data, we're hardening many of our facilities. We will have a couple of requests to harden City Hall a little bit, both from a physical perspective, but also from a data perspective. We just presented to get our ratings on our water and wastewater bonds, and cybersecurity was one of the questions. And we told them we are very committed to this. Our IT department's very committed to it. We take it very seriously. And so while that's still listed up here, because it's always a concern, I think we're addressing it quite well. And so you may see this come off in future years. Certainly under demographics, we still have a homelessness challenge, an affordable housing challenge, and then always a conversation around growth and density. And we did not label that red or green or blue or anything. It's just a conversation that we know you all get to have a lot, and we wanted to make sure we reflected that. Under infrastructure, we just got done talking about street maintenance. Certainly looking at other items up there. As you see, we have conduit and fiber listed as an area that we're addressing. We feel like this will come off in the very near future as well. Our rings are getting established, we're getting traffic signals hooked up, et cetera. So we're very excited about that progress. ADA compliance will probably stay up here for the foreseeable future, but council will see and hopefully remember that you all directed us to put some significant dollars towards that. And so you'll see on our CIP side of how we're doing that. So again, we feel pretty good about that. And then under our financial resiliency, we've worked hard about defining that, what our service levels are. And at this point, it's funding gaps, decisions that we need your help in making. And so we'll continue to bring those to you and hopefully find ways to close many of those gaps. So again, this is just in middle of sausage being made, and so we just want to continue to get your input, get your direction, and then, we'll be bringing these budget decisions to you later this fall.
Thank you, Mr. Archer. Mr. Marriott has a question.
Yeah, so observation. Both on the income side and expenditure side of all of these different funds and things in the budget, inflation plays a big part in it. And at various times, it's a small factor, and sometimes it's a bigger factor. Recently, it's certainly been bigger, more than it was before. But yet, within these budgets, I don't see, it's implied that there's an inflationary factor in there. But it's difficult for, I think, the council to determine, is this revenue increase due to inflation or is this due to growth? Obviously, in almost all cases, it's some of both, but knowing how much of each might be really important. The other thing is, there's the inflation in the revenues that we get, but there's also the inflation in the expenditures that we make, and those aren't always aligned too. Sometimes, whether it's street paving is more inflationary or less or whatever. And so I'm wondering if when we see these or in a budget, if there's any opportunity to build, kind of overtly into these either types of presentation or materials or budgets. On the revenue side, our expectation is 2% growth next year. 1.9 of that is due to an inflationary factor, and 0.1 is due to growth. And help a council have an idea of, as councils are asked to increase the things that the city does. That's the most frequent thing. We've got to subsidize more people's housing, or we've got to, put people up when it's cold, or we have to do this, we have to do that. And the part of the revenue that's inflationary is really not available to do that. And so it's a little bit hard, I think, for council to look at, well, we have, $100 million sales tax revenue, and it's going to go up by 2 or 2.3% next year. That's $2.5 million, and this request is only for $500,000. Sure, we ought to be able to figure that out, when the reality is that the increase in the revenue, some percentage of that is inflationary, and the expenditures are going to inflate similarly, maybe more, maybe even less, but then the net actual growth is more what a council has to contemplate for additional expenditures for the myriad of requests that we get. And so I'm wondering if there's some way to kind of build that overtly into this type of stuff, just so that we can have a better idea of what the city's forecast is for that piece of the budget. Because, when I look at it, I tend to look at it more in a net position rather than just expenditures versus income. And the net position to me is more important. And I can visualize it after 10 years up here, but I think it's much more difficult for other people to visualize that. And that's what's really important, honestly, is kind of the net position, because, we have a streets maintenance deficit. If our net position is increasing, we have some ability to address that. If our net position is decreasing, we have to make some structural changes somewhere at some point, at least eventually, just to avoid going bankrupt, And so I'd love to see somehow that included in here some way.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. I think I need to offer that Dawn and Linda and myself have been talking about ways to further define revenue growth with you all. That's one of the things I know you've asked for, a deeper dive on the expenditure side, certainly, and we owe you that. But how do we also do that on the revenue side? So it is a challenge. I mean, let's pick on a grocery store. XYZ grocery store, how do you define inflation versus growth? Did XYZ grocery store on 80th grow because we have more residents, or did it grow because the cost of chicken went up? That part is hard for us. Certainly, I think we can define pretty well growth with new opportunities. So we've added 5 new restaurants in an area. We can say, yeah, that increased revenue we didn't have before.
Yeah. Or revenue, for instance.
The OR revenue, exactly right. We can easily do that one. But let us give some thought to that and see how we can better prepare you all to have those conversations.
So I think the difficulty is, so like in my store, what we can do, we can look at our gross revenue, and we can look at our gross revenue within a category, or we can look at our gross revenue within a brand, or we can look at our gross revenue in an item.
Yep.
And that shows one part of the picture. The other part of the picture is quantity.
Yep.
So we can look at number of skis we sold, or number of this brand we sold, or number of this category we sold. And we have maybe a little easier time trying to figure out the inflationary figure versus the growth figure. We can see if our revenue's up and our numbers are up, we have growth, certainly.
Yeah.
If our revenue's up and our numbers are the same, we probably don't really have much growth. And if our numbers are up and if our dollars are up but our numbers are down, we almost certainly have only inflationary things. And we try to act differently on the expenditure side, given that picture. So the revenue side guides kind of the expenditure side. Now, government's totally different.
Yeah.
And so we don't have units that we sell, here in the city to generate revenue. But, and I'm not so sure that even the revenue side can guide the expenditure side so much. Ultimately, it does, but in a shorter time frame, in a year-to-year time frame, it probably doesn't so much. But I think it's easier to understand it from a revenue guiding expenses side than other way, and it'd be nice if there was some formula that just had some look at it. Because with these city budgets, obviously the numbers are giant, it's
Absolutely.
hundreds of millions
of dollars.
Hundreds of millions of dollars, right?
Yeah.
So small changes are significant, like a 1% inflation to me in my business doesn't mean much, but it means a lot in the city's budget. And so trying to see that, I think, would be good. So anyway, just a question or suggestion.
Absolutely, and I will say that we're not the only city, county, state organizations that struggle with this. I don't know if it's a new thought process, but another way to tie it is to tie it to your population. So you have 120,000 people, you make, $120 million. Okay, each person is worth $1,000, and then next year, if that goes to 1,010, but your population didn't change to as you're describing, okay, well, we got 10% of growth somewhere, somehow. We've played a little bit with that, and it didn't support anything.
Hard because when populations change, right? Like,
correct.
We get old and we spend less.
Yeah.
We earn less. We do
Absolutely.
less.
Absolutely.
We at certain times in our lives we have a bunch of kids and then we spend a lot more.
Absolutely.
I think they're hard. They're hard metrics. But to me, if it was like I would love to see. And obviously these are forecasts and they're best guesses with the information you have. Nobody would hold you to it. But like when we look at, whether it's by the year, or, I don't think you need to do it by the quarter, but by the year, we expect 2% revenue growth. We're attributing 1.7% of that to inflation and 0.3% of that to growth. And, there's probably ways as you complete the year and you look back to quantify how close were we, and over time maybe refine the estimates to come up with estimates. I only bring it up because I think it'd be valuable information for a council to have to see kind of, yes, all these numbers are going up on both sides of the ledger, the revenue and the expenditures, but what does it really mean? And I think that understanding what it really means, that that's the difficult thing, and having a little more information might help with that.
Okay. Thank you. Okay.
I see no more lights.
Okay, we'll move to the next one. Okay, you give me again. Yay. Deb has to go. She has to go celebrate her grandbaby's birthday. She's being very stubborn, so you all tell her to go. And I will not do as good a job as she was going to do on this presentation, so here we go. So now we're going to dive into the CIP. This one will go a little bit quicker. Ultimately, we've already talked about this. As you know, 98101, that's the code section that requires that 60% of the first cent of sales tax revenue goes to debt or capital-related debt. Basically, 20% of our sales tax revenue, operating sales tax revenue, our 3%, has to be set aside and used for capital. And so that 1% that change from 2.1 or 2.3% to 1% is now costing the CIP fund the dollars you see in blue. So while that also affects 14 million roughly in our general fund, you also see round numbers, $3 million reduction here. We're just trying to reflect that and show you the cycles that we go through with our funding. This shows how we are then going to adjust to make up that loss. So basically, the largest expenditure in our 98101 funds is related to three main projects: 72nd Avenue, Ralston Road, Myers Pool, now the Arvada Aquatic Center, and the debt related to that. And so we are taking our reserve in our unallocated 98101 funds, and we're storing those until we complete these three projects. Ralston Road is done. Myers Pool, Arvada Aquatic Center is done. And so now we're still waiting for the 72nd Avenue work. We know we're going to have to issue additional debt to complete that project. And so you will see on this line, we're reserving about 1.6 million for that. What we don't know is, will that debt be 20 million, 25 million, 30 million, 15 million? We don't know where that will fall. And so we're also holding an inflation reserve and the plus or minus adjustment from the 98101 funds to do all of that. If the project gets off the ground, and we're hoping it will, and we start construction again next year, we issue debt, and we have remaining dollars in 2026, those dollars will come back in and become unallocated and then be repurposed for other CIP-related projects. Okay? This is a reflection of those three projects, just what I was talking about. And you will notice that on 72nd Avenue, we're currently expecting the all-in budget to be somewhere around 97 million, leaving us that gap of about 28 million today.
Mr. Archer, could I
Yes.
ask a question about,
Please.
Do you know, like, how are we dealing with the waiting on the railroad and all of, I assume we have contingency planning to be able to continue to make sure the funds are available even if we are continued to be delayed by the railroad?
Yes. So we're investing all of the funds that we currently have and getting a somewhere between 2.8 and 3.3% return on that, in hopes that at least we're offsetting some level of inflation. And then we're holding these dollars here to help to make sure that we can complete those projects. So ideally, we'll get an agreement with the railroad very soon, and then we can harden all of these dollars and move forward. So that's why you will notice that, I mean, sitting on in 2027, what is the equivalent of about $2.3 million unallocated is uncomfortable, but it's also making sure that we get these three projects that were voted by our citizens done.
Thank you.
Sure. If we take a look at this, this is just the table for the 98101 funds and how they're being allocated. And as I stated, the bond payments and the dollars for those three projects are the lion's share of the allocation. You will notice as you move down below, you have administration, streets, parks, TLC, and medians. Those are our broad categories of areas that we have specific projects under that I'm going to run very quickly through. And 9.3 million, and it grows as you move throughout the cycle, again, is being put to those bond payments and those projects. So if we jump in a little bit deeper, this gets a little bit more specific on those 4 areas that I just spoke about and how the dollars are then being carved up in the higher level categories. So you'll notice there's an engineer in here, there's a bridge program, the ADA program that we spoke about, we'll dive in here a little bit deeper, and then some other related items, some TLC on parks, et cetera. So this is just further diving in and breaking those pieces up of that funding. As we transition into the different broader categories, this is our administration category. We really have no changes since the last time we presented this to you all. You will notice the very large project summaries are public art, fiber, and median renovation. These are 10-year totals. These aren't annual totals. So these are the collective for those individual areas. And if we dive a little bit deeper, these are the actual individual projects that are active today under CIP administration. These should all look very familiar to you. Some you will see are old ones, like the Old Town Parking Garage. You might say, well, why do we still have money for that? We still have capital needs, and so we still are identifying dollars to make sure we can meet those needs. You will notice some that might be new. For example, budget tool replacement. That is some dollars so that we can have an enhanced budget tool moving forward. So this fall, we will be looking at implementing that.
And the natatorium, is that the Arvada Aquatic Center?
It is.
Okay. We just seen it in different names on here.
It's
so,
named
yeah.
multiple things.
Okay.
The AC, yeah, the AC. But what those dollars are for is, as part of our agreement with Jefferson County and Apex, we agreed to put up the first $1.5 million of any capital maintenance costs. And so that is that bucket of money. So if it goes above a certain dollar amount that Apex is required to do, then they can come to us, or Jefferson County can come to us and say, we need to replace XYZ, and that's $250,000. It comes out of those funds until that $1.5 million is expired. Then we agreed that we would revisit that and see where we are. If the city can continue to move forward with funding that, we will. If we need to talk with the partnership, we will. And we'll rename that the AC. You'll also notice 2 large projects still here that we haven't capitalized. Again, now Myers Bowl, but the AC. That will get capitalized this year. As we finish some punch list items, you approved a resolution just, I think, 2 sessions ago to help us finalize that. Some landscaping work that couldn't be done till this summer. And then you'll notice things like our evidence storage building and some undergrounding. Also on here, you'll notice the EV chargers, item that you approved last fall, the project that we're working on putting in. So these are the kinds of details that fall underneath those larger categories. The reason that we're sharing all of this with you tonight is just to reflect how much is really happening around here. You will notice as I move through these, each one of these grows in volume, size, and dollars. And so administration is the smallest of all of these. ADA, we talked a little bit about. So we were able to add additional ADA funding both for facilities, streets, and parks. And this has really helped to be additive to the projects we have in play. So if we have a project and there's an ADA need, we can then draw on these dollars to meet that ADA need, which has really helped our parks dollars, let's say, go further, or our streets dollars go further. It's also enabled the team to fix things that maybe they weren't going to have the opportunity to fix beforehand.
Councilmember Davis.
Yes, thank you. This ADA fund is exciting to me. The team was able to make upgrades to the Westwoods Clubhouse, so I thank you all for that. Went in and actually used some of the actuators for the doors, of which I spoke to the team. I really do appreciate that, and thank you for doing that, team.
Thank you for identifying that and also for funding those types of areas that we could then address. So it's been great. And again, these are listings of various ADA types projects throughout the organization. Some of these should look very familiar. Some you may not be quite aware of because they're projects coming up in the future. Next, we move to traffic signals, one of our largest CIP expenditures. We have revolving funds here where we put a pot of money in each year, and then they identify the highest needs, and then those traffic signals are then upgraded or changed. Certainly, signal timing is on here. I think Councilmember Pfeiffer is very familiar with that fund. And then our interconnect program, where we're trying to make sure that we can get the fiber backbone to all the different traffic signals. You all remember this has been a project for years and years and years. So, our bridge program, certainly this is one that has been identified over the past few years with help from our partners, CDOT and others, who have helped identify various bridge concerns we have. We have, 64, okay, whew, it was up there. I was gonna mess that up. We have 64 bridges, many of them are quite old. We had a presentation to us last week during our CRP process. We're gonna talk about that here in just a minute, of some of these bridges that I felt like I was looking at something that was from the Wild West, and they were Arvada bridges. And we're like, oh my goodness, where's that? And it was like, oh, I drive over that every day. I didn't know that was there. So an area of opportunity here that you're gonna hear a lot about. We also have sidewalks, trails, and mobility. No update here. These dollars were identified during the 2015 Citizen Capital Improvement Committee, and we're still working on implementing the areas that were identified 10 years ago. And now we'll roll into a little bit more detail under transportation. So you'll notice guardrails, utility undergrounding, school safety. Each of these are larger categories that then have individual projects below them, okay, with the descriptions of how that funding comes around and then how we use it. And our current projects, I'm not going to spend any time on this. This is more detail for you all, so you can be aware. Parks. So you will remember for parks, they really have three main large areas, really four, that they work on. So playground renovations, irrigations, and trails are the biggest items. Playgrounds, they try to go throughout the city and replace the oldest playgrounds. We shoot for 3 to 4 of those a year. Some years we can only get 1 or 2. Some years we get 5. Really, we've been averaging between 2 and 3. Pretty exciting, some of the stuff that they do there, and I think you're all very familiar with that. Irrigation, obviously, we're trying to upgrade all of our irrigation to maximize our water usage. This is under parks, but it's really golf. If you hadn't had the opportunity to watch the podcast related to Joe Coonsey and the work that they've done out at the golf course, both at Westwoods and Lake Arbor, with their irrigation, you should take that opportunity, but it also reflects what they're doing in the parks as well, where they have such smart usage of rain and whatever to the heads that they can actually adjust individual heads. So they can reflect how much water's coming out, how much they should put on, and really has been saving tons of money in water, but it's also made our park system and our golf much greener. Adams County, I want to talk a little bit about that. So we do get money for Adams County that must be used in Adams County. And we have just a sliver of Arvada. And so you will notice that there's a few projects for this, but they're very specific on where they can be used and what we can use those dollars for. So it's not a lot of money, but over time it does add up, and then it enables us to really reinvest in that area. And here's a list of all the active parks projects. There's a lot of them. Okay, so that's quick through that piece of it. We're going to talk about streets. You've heard a lot about this. Councilmember Marriott just had a nice conversation. Certainly about how we can implement and what we need moving forward. So you'll notice since 2016, we've been able to kind of add to each year. Now you'll notice this goes like this. And a lot of that is because we take one-time funds like we did this year, added $2.4 million, and spend that. That may not necessarily be the case in 26. And so you'll see it return back to a lower number. We have been committed to this since 2016. Anytime we get additional revenue, we've been adding some percentage to this. And so while in 2024 we spent about $14.5 million, and we're projected to spend a little over 15.5 this year, almost 16, we certainly know that we're not where we want to be. And so just wanted to pop this slide up there. I think you've seen it many times over. If we take a look at,
Mr. Archer,
Yes,
sorry
please.
to interrupt
I
you.
apologize.
It's okay. When we were running through the park slides, it reminded me that we had won an award from the federal government for $7 million?
7.3.
Okay, for that, and we weren't sure what the status of that was. I know Congresswoman Pedersen has sent out some emails about this, so I was wondering if there are other funding categories, or maybe this could be a future workshop items of just like funds that are still kind of in the gray area that we're not sure if we're getting them, if we're not getting them, if we have to come up with contingency plans, if the money's never come through, or what the latest from Congress has been about making sure that money we're planning on is actually going to materialize?
It's a very fair question. That example is one that we will know more in September.
Okay.
And whether or not we're going to receive those funds. All of our conversations are that those are dollars that have already been appropriated and that we should receive them. It's only if somebody goes and claws those back that we would not get them. But there's certainly a possibility that that could happen. We will take the opportunity to revisit. I know our housing area has done a lot of work on that.
Okay.
And identified areas of concern. The projects that we've received either federal or state funding on, mostly parks related, we feel very confident that we will get those dollars. As part of the budget presentation we received last week, the parks team themselves are working on contingency. So the one you're talking about would be for Gold Strike Park. It's a match, so we have approximately $7.3 million of our own to match with what we were to receive. If we were not to get the federal money, we would probably look at how we could still do the park, but not quite at the level that we could do it.
Okay, great, thank you.
I have a question about the streets.
Sure.
So you said in 2024, we spent 14.5 million, and that is well below what we want to be spending. Can you reiterate or remind us what it is we want? What's our goal? What do we want to be spending, and what is our, I get this asked all the time, what is our deficit that we're trying to fill?
Absolutely. It depends on what kind of model we implement. So if we implement a ongoing model, not a big flash model, so we say we're going to put a set amount of money over the next X number of years. The last number that we got, and correct me, Don, if I'm wrong on this, but it was around 30 million. And that would be the...
Annually,
correct. But that's the money we put in and we just move forward. That would help us get a lot of our product up to the appropriate numbers, but it would take a significant amount of time to do that. You also have the big bang thought process where you could take a certain amount of money, and I don't remember the fine. It was like 100 million is the number, a lot, that you would spend over a shortened period of time, let's say a 2 or a 3 year period. I don't know if we could do it, but this is the models that they run. And if you were able to do that, then it would lower your maintenance need down to more like 16 to 18 million moving forward. So we're close. If we could get everything up to the appropriate level, we could maintain it that way.
thank you for that.
Yeah. And again, this just shows what's in our budget moving forward. So again, as we talked, like 2025, we'll see that spike because we're adding the one-time dollars to it, and we'll return back down to, again, 13.6 million and then growing it from there. This does include the increase of 400,000 per year that we talked about starting in 2025. You'll also notice that there is salaries and benefits in this. Again, John, to the cost of implementation that you and I were talking about, I will double check and we will get back to you on that. But you'll also see how they split it out, asphalt and concrete. Obviously asphalt for the roads and then concrete for the sidewalks, the pans, and the other items related to that. This is a little bit further description of the increase we talked about. We're now rolling into our enterprise funds, and so these will all update. So what you're seeing up there is as it sits today, but these numbers will change throughout the cycle. So please understand these are big and they kind of jump all over the place, but certainly we will get the best information to you before and during this budget process. And so summarizing, these are the water projects, wastewater and stormwater projects that we're currently working on. So you got Gross Reservoir, we're still working on finalizing and finishing paying for that. As you know, it's been starting and stopping, starting and stopping. We just recently got a court order to allow the construction to continue, and now they're fighting over whether they can fill it or not, but we'll worry about that later. We have some distribution proposals, some pump stations, and then the replacement of our treatment facility. That is our large CIP costs on the water side. Now on the wastewater side, you've got the north and the Ralston or central trunk lines. For you that live on the east side, you're very familiar with what's happening as Sheridan is opening up and construction is continuing along that line. It's going very well. Pretty excited about that. And the utilities team has a bunch of work that's coming. They've got a bunch of projects that they've engineered and ready to go, and they're going to start putting them out to bid. So you're going to see North Trunk Line and Central or Ralston Trunk Line requests showing up for you to approve over the next few months. And then on the stormwater side, as we talked, they've got their master plan, and they're really working on priorities now. And so priorities are difficult. You have a partner in some urban drainage work that we need to have done, and so we're nailing those down. We feel pretty good with this presentation we received last week that we've got our priorities set, and then we'll get those built into this next model. I wanted to leave you with the information we got last week. So we had our CIP budget last week, and so these are the projects that are being requested by the various groups, the various areas. Not all of these will be funded, not all of these will be recommended, but we just wanted to show you kind of what the team is working on. And so I think the one I want to point out on all of this is the synthetic turf out at Long Lake. That turf has been out there for a while, and it needs to be replaced. And so we're working on ways to get that replaced. Councilmember Pfeiffer?
Well, I was going to bring that one up because it's open to everyone to use it, right? Programmatically? Because,
Yes.
before it was only Edge or whoever could use
Edge
it.
still has an agreement out there, and I know legal is working on that with Parks on how that will look moving forward. But it is open. Edge is a priority user, and then it's open after
To
that.
everyone else.
Yeah.
Because I think Nike helped pay for the original turf.
There was a few individuals that helped paid for that, yeah.
So I think they got some money. So this is now, that whole side's going to get yanked or
Yeah.
proposed.
It's proposed.
It's proposed
And I will
project.
say, the direction of the CMO, Dawn and Linda, has been that we prioritize these projects from a safety perspective. And so there's certainly safety concerns for any of you that might have played or have children or partners or spouses or whatever who've played on that. Those fields are starting to need help. But yeah, the goal moving forward is that the city would then own all of that, and we would control and be able to prioritize without a contract.
Okay, because it is kind of an odd situation, so that kind of gets resolved. I hate for us to invest in something that has a conflict of who operates and owns that turf.
The presentation assumed that the city would
Own it and operate it.
Own
I
and
just don't want
operate
any exclusivity on it if we're going to spend any dollars on it.
it. Understood.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. And you will see reinvestment at the golf course. Both the Westwood side are the ones listed here, but there's concrete repairs needed on both Westwoods and Lake Arbor, and then some bunker work. You will notice on the facility side, we were talking about security, so you have electrical security, counter security in City Hall, and then you'll notice in transportation, you've got some TLC in Old Town, some school flasher, interconnectivity, and then the two big items we just talked about, bridges and guardrails. Also, what you'll notice up here is identification of the street assistance program, what used to be called the 50/50 program, and that was being proposed to kind of start that conversation and really figure out the parameters around that and if and how we could implement it. So there's the CIP. Any questions I can answer?
Councilmember Marriott.
Yes, so I have a question. I think it was on your second slide or something, but it talked about a 2025 COP issuance, $20 million COP issuance.
Yeah.
So that'll be coming to council at some point?
So, yeah, has to. And the reason that that was put up there was for narrowing the gap on 72nd Avenue. It's listed as 2025 because that was what the original proposal was. You can see today we actually moved that till 2027 because we don't think we will actually need those funds until 27. And so we just wanted to reflect that our original plan showed it in 25, but I don't think we're going to do that till 27.
Right, okay, sounds good. It brings up a couple, maybe pieces that belong underneath this CIP plan that might be, again, good information for us to have on council. So I know the city has probably at least several COPs out there, or do we? I guess I don't know. I know in my time on council, we've certainly issued COPs before, and so I don't know what the status of any of those are.
Sure. So we have one, which is the Myers Pool, Arvada Aquatic Center.
That's it. The previous ones are all paid off.
Paid it off in 24.
And redeemed. Okay, so as we approach that new COP issuance, maybe seeing just a breakdown of when we've issued COPs and when we paid them off and how many we have, what we have outstanding in COP, just so we have a picture of that. The other is, and I know this is a very small thing when you talk about the whole budget, but I know we have several sales tax incentives out there that are not ORA, that are different than urban renewal, and seeing again just a recap of those might be warranted. We haven't done one of those in a while, so I wouldn't be surprised if they've maybe all trailed off and maybe all gone. But I know the King Supers and Candelas was one of them, and there were a number of them.
Yeah, we have very few left, but we can certainly get you that.
But it'd be good to see that because that may very well be part of requests or budget pictures going forward. And then the last thing I would say is I remember some years ago when we talked about these CIP categories and, kind of making allocations to them and all that. And I'm wondering, Bob and I would assume are probably the only ones left on council from when those things were determined that at some point in the future it might be worth it for council to have a little talk about that because they actually do impact the CIP program dramatically when you're allocating dollars for certain items that may or may not be relevant anymore or may not rise to the level of relevance where we want them to be as prominently as they are. And so, again, I don't know how long that's been, but I would guess every 4, 5, 6 years, council ought to have some kind of discussion about do we have the right categories here and do we have dollars kind of allocated properly within the categories, or are there some things we should take out of there and maybe some things we should add in there and
Absolutely.
reshuffle that deck. So that would be the only other thing I would say.
Councilmember Pfeiffer.
Yeah, I mean, you sparked another thought too, and maybe with council, maybe you're implying it, maybe I didn't catch it quite, but it might not be a bad idea for the councils, but it's because it has changed and will change even more coming up about all of those scenarios that he just mentioned. Like where are we at, how much longer, what have been paid back. I don't think that wouldn't hurt, just for continuity.
Sure.
Because you're right, the Candelas one, I mean, we gave them the $2 million in tax share back, and where are we at on that? When does that sunset and get done, or did they already pay?
That's been paid off for a long time.
Yeah, it was fast, I think, if I remember
Under
right.
3 years,
Yeah. How do we get more of those deals? Do we make money on that one? No? Damn. But we have, if those are there, if there's any outstanding ones.
Yeah, we can do both. We can give you a history and show you what's still outstanding.
Yeah,
We
because
have to do that.
Yeah, and it would also be good I know this might digress a little bit, but even some of our revolving loan stuff that we have out there as well, kind of, because we have investments in different ways and we do it, and sometimes, obviously, this doesn't all show it, all the funding, but we do have some investments coming in that are kind of creative by your team, and I don't think council knows all about all those little deals and stuff.
Okay.
I think it'd be good, but it's a great job again.
Okay.
Still want my line item budget, and that's just a tribute to a former council member.
The line item budget is available for download online anytime you'd like it. It's only 1 year.
I want it printed.
Councilmember Davis.
Thank you again, Mr. Archer. This was very informative. I always learn something new when you step to the mic, so I appreciate it. And yes, a little bit of history would be very helpful. Because I didn't know about the $2 million to Candela.
Well, I see no more lights, so thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Archer. Really appreciate you and your team putting this all together for us this evening.
Yeah, I appreciate your time and the feedback. Thank you very much.
And City Manager Don Wick, do we have anything in addition for this evening?
I just have a couple of things for you tonight. We had a very eventful weekend this past weekend. I think, as everybody knows, we had a couple of thousand people that turned out for the powwow at the Arvada Center, which was a great turnout. I haven't heard yet about the turnout at Summerfest, but I'm sure that we'll have a report on that this week that we can give you on Friday, but I understand it was also very popular. And then at the large and bulky item pickup, we had 1,420 vehicles go through that process too. So a really great, when you think about all the events and the large turnout we had, that was really great. And then we have a business meeting coming up next, and we'll be getting that agenda out to you shortly. So that's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, City Manager Don. And City Attorney Ms. Morris, do you have anything for us?
I don't. Thank you, Your Honor.
All right. Well, I believe with that, we are adjourned. Thank you.